to D&D Beyond, and today I have gathered once again one of my favorite people. Please welcome back Xander Jeanneret.
Hello. Happy to be here anytime.
And I've called you specifically, and thank you for maybe accidentally being very on theme because we are going to
Mhm.
talk Oath of the Open Sea Paladin.
Yar. Listen, I
Please.
have to highly recommend it with no spoilers. Go see Our Flag Means Death. Much like unicorns and fairies and the Babadook, pirates are gay now. I don't make the rules. It's just how it is. So
Amazing sources for inspiration for your D&D campaign can be found right now in such shows as Our Flag Means Death. Uh, but
Yes.
that is, I love that we're actually starting with that because one of the things I love about this subclass, which is a homebrew subclass created by Matt Mercer specifically for one of his players in the
Yay.
second campaign of Critical Role, but you can use this subclass on D&D Beyond by a special agreement, and it was recently updated, February of this year. A couple new spells added onto there. We today are going to be going over the basics of the Open Sea Paladin, using as our reference point a wonderful article by David Atkins for
Yes.
dndbeyond.com from February, which is a link running through chat or in the description. And it has
Ooh.
everything you need to know, but we are going to dive in a little bit to this thematic and delightful move around and smite things and be gone before they can try to catch you like the wind paladin
Aha.
subclass. Before we dive into that, I want to quickly note that we are, depending when you're watching this, looking forward to or in the middle of Jasper's Game Week,
Oh yeah.
our annual charity team up with Jasper's Game Day, the wonderful organization which works for mental health support and suicide prevention, is on, and it's going to be all day, every day, May 9th through 13th. Please tune in. We have literally many dozens of amazing guests joining
So
us for
many.
this.
One after another, every table just gets it's like, "Oh, them and them and them? Wow."
Mm, Thank you. I'm very excited. You can donate to affect those games, and I hope that you will, not just because that'll be fun to watch, but because it's a great, great cause. As usual, a quick reminder: we are coming in close to the release of Martin Canon Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. You can pre-order the anthology of adventures, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and
Ooh,
Spelljammer, Adventures in Space. If you
it's
need some more,
confirmed!
it is in fact confirmed. And who knows? Maybe your open sea paladin is gonna head for a different kind of sea entirely.
Oh, I got
Um,
goosebumps, that's so cool. Ah, the Astral Sea.
all right. Yes, the oath of the astral open sea, open astral sea.
I'm
Do your
in.
own combos there. Um, that was with no further preamble. Let's talk about this paladin subclass. If you want to use it on D&D Beyond, you're going to want to go in the character creator and enable the critical role content toggle. We got a little setting there. But obviously, you're going to want to talk with your DM about any custom content as you normally would when you're starting up a campaign. This paladin has an unusual oath because an oath to nature, an oath to freedom may sound initially contradictory. But I love the way this theming, answering the call of the sea, and service to nature, who, as we know, there are dozens of nature deities you can choose. It's originally for the Wild Mother, about whom you can learn more in Wildmount. Um,
Mhm.
if you buy Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, I made that kind of vague. There will be a nice section on her in there. Um, but you could use this with any nature or storm or tempest deity. And I love the way it works together for that theme. It focuses on basically insight into nature, mobility around the battlefield, and freedom, essentially,
Mm.
um, as its big themes. Xander, what's your overall impression of this subclass?
I love stuff like this. Whenever you can take a class and just sort of, we've talked about this before, add these limitations, but more like specialties. So with this one, it's a very easy to picture this type of character and then flavor it however you want, because it's sort of giving you those building blocks that you don't have to start from scratch. And I love that. One thing I wanted to bring up too, and I think they sort of addressed this in the article a little bit, but in like today's table of playing D&D, I find myself using more of a theater of the mind style rather than like the grid with minis and actually counting out, okay, 5 feet, 10 feet for movement and things like that. So I'm wondering, and because a lot of people now are playing online through D&D Beyond and things like that, I think this helps to enable both the visual like imagination of moving around the board and making that easier to navigate, but also you can implement the mechanics if you really want to get like nitty gritty down into it.
I do think it will help for folks who are sort of trying to make the connection between a theme and mechanics. I think the subclass will be a very especially if you happen to be a newer player, like to help you sort of along the sense of that becoming intuitive. A lot of the
Hmm.
way that these are like, oh, I've covered the field with fog. Now we technically we need to learn rules about being obscured. But in practice,
Right.
you're like, we're covered in fog. It's harder to hit us. They can't see us because they can't target us with stuff. Light bulb.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I love that symbiosis.
Yes.
Um,
Well, I mean, and this really leans into working with your team because when you're a player that is controlling the actual environment around, you're controlling the battlefield and enabling others to have mobility as well.
yes, and we will get into those mechanics right now, but I do love that it also puts a twist on the paladin as protector. Because
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, rather than just being like, I will stand here and take the hits so you
The
don't, it
tank.
can be like, I will
Yeah.
make them chase me around this field or cast a thing another way to apply things like aura of protection as a concept,
Mhm.
where it's just like I can't be grappled and none of you can either.
Right,
Um,
right. Too slippery.
yeah, oh, that's I love that. Just coat everybody with sea spray, and that's the way that you flavor implement the aura of liberation.
There it is, and it's great exfoliant too.
So let's get into the specifics of some of these things for the subclass. Xander, if we pop open the subclass, like all
Mhm.
paladins, you are swearing an oath, and that oath has,
Yes.
in this case, certain tenets. What are the
Yes.
tenets of the open sea?
The tenets of the open sea. Freedom can be a selfless virtue or a selfish want. For paladins who swear the oath of the open sea, freedom is the highest calling and a gift to be granted to all. No greater life than a life lived free. One should be free to chart their own path without oppression. Those who would exert their power to dominate others shall be smote. Trust the skies, the guidance of a strong breeze, the rumbling warnings of a coming storm. Nature is a source of portent and counsel that should be heeded. Adapt like the water. The waters of the ocean can shift around any obstacle or become the most impassable obstacle of all. They carve away the land to reveal the secrets of the past or swallow the truth and hide it forever. To embrace this fluidity is to be ready for any challenge. Explore the uncharted. The world is filled with mystery. Through the pursuit of enigmatic ends, one can uncover those who hide their foul deeds and find the path to becoming something great.
Okay, first of all, that's the canonical way to read these tenets. Just I'm
You have
declaring
to.
it.
Mhm.
But you can check them yourself. They are in the paladin entry on the site, just above where it starts getting into those mechanics. And you speaking of those mechanics, you get some extra oath spells. Let's dive into it. You're gonna get
Yeah.
things like create or destroy water, expeditious
Yes.
retreat, augury and misty step, call lightning, freedom of the waves, which is a new one we'll talk about in a sec, control
Ooh.
water, freedom of movement, and finally commune with nature and freedom of the winds. Is there something from this list, Xander, that sort of stands out to you?
Yes. One of the things that they mention a bit in the article is that this will be a really useful class if you're going on like a nautical adventure. If you know going into it that this campaign sort of takes place in the sea. But what they're saying here with some of these things like create water, and we'll talk about freedom of the waves and things like that, you're bringing the creation of the water with you to be able to control that water. So it's adaptable to multiple different environments. And I
Mhm.
love to see characters throughout a whole campaign be in environments that they're not suited for, but flourish in anyway, and then get a chance to show off when finally we get out to sea and they're in their environment and they get to be the star of the party.
I love that. That's a great way of looking at it. And as is nicely pointed out in the article, you can see the themes and those tenets reinforced in the choice of spells here. So, augury and commune with nature are going to
Mhm.
enhance that I should listen to nature element, which
Very
is the
much
way
l
in which you're showing your service as a paladin here.
Yeah,
While we get Misty Step for popping around in tandem with a
right.
lot of the things we're about to find out about.
Yeah, yeah, and when you think about, like, nautical journeys, a lot of that was not just superstitious, but they were using the constellations, they were using the shape of the waves, their environment, they were just more aware of it to give them hints because the environment could be deadly.
Hmm. The there's a lot of rich thematic material from the real life history of every form of sailing where
Mm,
the thing that exerts the most control over your life, your the gift, the curse, the danger, it's all one thing, and that is the forces of nature you are trying to combat. Um, so let's see, you get your oath spells at third level. You're going to get a
mhm,
few new channel divinity options. You get Marine Layer and Fury of the Tides. Now, Marine Layer is
ooh,
the one I referenced a little bit ago that is going to create some obscuring forces on the
mhm,
battlefield. It will heavily obscure the area around you, although you and folks within 5 feet are only lightly obscured. And you can see the details on how that works. But essentially, it means it's not going to hamper you as much as it will hamper your enemies, who will not be able to see you, and therefore every ability that requires them to see you can't be used. And attacks that you launch against an enemy you can't see always have disadvantage. So a nice hide in the fog summon there through channeling your divinity. And Fury of the Tides is going to let you move enemies around and add strength to your attacks, which, since you're a paladin running around probably smiting things, is an
mhm.
excellent two different ways to go there.
Yeah, I
Um,
love both of this because it really sets up for like a team-based combat. And once
mhm.
this party knows how to utilize these tricks together, it creates some magical moments that you get in combat. And that, I just love that stuff working together.
And I do also love that while this is a paladin devoted to freedom, it's built in that you want to provide freedom to others. So
Hmm.
a while you could take this as very much a solo act kind of person, it's going to be at its best when it is working across with others, even though it has a theme of total freedom. And I think that's a very smart series of choices because, as we know, DD, you got to work together. It's not going to go well.
Yeah. Well, and it also reflects that sort of archetype, right? I mean, they talk about it in the article of mentioning Jack Sparrow or Han Solo, where they're roguish, amazing characters on their own, but the journeys that we go on are them learning to work together as a team where everybody's building together. And that's the magic of it.
Hmm. Oh, and let's see. Okay, so a quick run through the remaining features that come with this subclass. You're going to get the Aura of Liberation at 7th level, which we talked about. Makes you and your allies immune to being grappled or restrained, and removes movement and attack penalties for being underwater. Stormy Waters is going to help you control that battlefield by allowing you to inflict some damage on enemies coming and going. Mythic Swashbuckler is just real fun.
Amazing. Yeah.
Xander, what does Mythic Swashbuckler do?
Become the embodiment of heroic sea captains for 1 minute. You gain a climbing speed, advantage on athletics checks made using strength, advantage on attack rolls when fighting one on one, and advantage on dexterity checks and saving throws against the effects you can see. This is very much like a Captain Hook type of moment. I think you're just really great at the fencing or leading others in this nautical environment. It really does embody these heroic sea captains.
And of course, you are still a paladin, so you're still going to be in there
Right.
mixing it up in fights. A lot of the time. You're going to get a fighting style. You're going to get your smite damage that requires you to hit things, and that's all going to work together, sort of with this ultimate duelist kind of quality. The specifics on that stormy waters are that the creature at 15th level, you can call on the force of crashing waters as a reaction whenever a creature moves into or out of your reach. The creature takes 1d12 bludgeoning damage and must succeed on a strength saving throw against your spell save DC or be knocked prone. So that
Amazing.
sets you up again for teamwork, for
Yeah.
taking advantage of those conditions in a way that makes this really stand out.
This
Um,
is the character that I wanna have on my team when it looks like there is no way out of the situation, when we're backed into a corner because this is the paladin that's gonna turn it around, turning the tides, if you
Absolutely.
will.
Very quickly, we're gonna look at there's 2 spells that come with this one, Freedom of the Waves and Freedom of the Winds. Freedom of the Waves is going to create an area of water around you, a deluge of seawater, in a radius around, the point in range. Tidal wave, whirlpool, water spout, or another form. Everyone inside it, is going to need to do strength saving throws, or take bludgeoning damage and fall prone. You can choose some creatures to not be affected by that. And while
Which
you're
is
inside your
great.
own deluge, you can have a little extra teleport action going on.
I mean, it's just become the waterbender and then maybe the airbender, just so good.
Indeed. So to follow up Freedom of the Waves, you're going to get Freedom of the Winds, which is 10 minutes of concentration, but that sets you up for those keen escapes. Wind wraps around your body, tugging at your hair and clothing as your feet lift off the ground. Flying speed of 60 feet, advantage on ability checks to avoid being grappled, and on saving throws against restrained or paralyzed. And when you are targeted by a spell or attack while you've got your wind going, it is concentration. You can
Mm.
use a reaction to teleport 60 feet to an unoccupied speed you can see, and if it takes you out of range, you're unaffected, and the freedom drops. So, in combination with things that force the enemies to focus on you, and then make them waste their attack because you're not there anymore. This is a
Mhm.
fun take on the paladin tank role for me, and also just very cool and fun and themey.
Very epic. Yeah, it's creating those moments where it's like, "Oh, you thought we were beaten."
There are some great tips for building and putting into action an oath of the Open Sea Paladin in this article. A run through of the pros and cons and how you might want to use it, and some unconventional tips. Like if you're building one of these, this author, and I would tend to agree, recommends that while normally you might make strength your highest stat for a paladin, in this case you might want to do charisma.
Which is
To
really
bolster some
interesting.
of those spell usage things, and then maybe hit your strength and constitution. Any advice, Xander, that you would have for someone putting together their first paladin of the open sea?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would love to sort of test it out and see what they're talking about with that sort of stat distribution because with all of the focus on magic and the spell casting, I would think you'd want your con to be a bit higher so you could provide more of that tank roll when you do actually get hit. You need the HP to back it up. But no, I think that that's how you're going to flavor your character no matter what. And so base stats can only go so far. It depends on the roles and how you flavor all of it.
Of Absolutely, and there are some great recommendations in this article for some feats that you might wanna pair with your Open Sea Paladin, some races that might thematically combine well with your Open Sea Paladin, and some extra spells that could tandem in nicely. Specifically, I love the idea of using Compelled Duel to make opponents try to chase you around the battlefield.
That's I think sort of the idea behind it, this like taunt mechanic of you always wanna come after me because I'm the one that can distract and run around. It's sort of like this is into comic stuff, but it reminds me of like a Silver Surfer style thing as far as I know that lore.
I love the idea of building Silver Surfer as like a Spelljammer specific Open Sea Paladin, um,
Ah!
who's accidentally bound to like an evil force of nature, which is the planet Devour Galactus.
Oh
For
my gosh!
reference,
I
who needs
want
to
this
break
so
that oath?
much.
Okay, we got to do it.
Yes, I have to tell you too, because my comics knowledge is a little bit lacking, but I did play the Silver Surfer NES game like crazy when I was a kid. I loved it.
Incredible. There is also in this article a sample build for an Oath of the Open Sea Paladin, which is well worth taking a look at. Wielding a scimitar, using the speed of a tabaxi to, maybe counterintuitively love and serve the water. How did that come to
Right.
be? I would like to hear that story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also, aren't there like big cats that thrive in jungle environments that like a tiger-based tabaxi would love the water, right? A swampy
I'm going to nod
based,
because I don't know, but that sounds good.
I think.
Chat, weigh in on cat choices for good nautical open sea paladin tabaxi
Ooh.
action. That is the quick tour. If you want more, please go check out this wonderful article from February by David Atkins, the link to which should be running through chat or in the description. And let us know in the comments if you have or if you plan to build yourself an open sea paladin and how you will use their loyalty to freedom, their insight into nature, and their swashbuckling style in your adventures.
Yar.